Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And Dr. Lopkin, we've been talking about bias in the media for quite a while. Always been there. But now it's gotten to a point where you really can't, it's gone over the top. I mean, we had a historic agreement in the Middle East between the United Arab Emirates and Israel, and other Gulf nations are probably going to follow suit. Nothing to be heard from the mainstream media.
No, it is absolutely unbelievable how they have ignored this story. The United Arab Emirates and Israel are normalizing relations. They're opening embassies. They're trading ambassadors. This is only the third time this has happened in Israel's existence.
Mm-hmm.
More than that, the United Arab Emirates has stated their intention to bring other Arab nations into the agreement, making this possibly the largest peace agreement in the Middle East ever. Both sides credit Donald Trump for bringing them together, and yet the mainstream news doesn't talk about this at all.
To me, it's very disturbing. It doesn't make a difference what side you're on. You brought up the whole concept. I mean, there used to be, they were always slightly to the left, but at least portrayed themselves as fair arbitrators of the news. They don't even care about that. I mean, you listen to CNN, it's at MSNBC, it's unbelievable. I mean, they were actually talking about a conspiracy where Trump is taking away mailboxes. Did you know that?
I heard that story. Yes, mailboxes were scheduled to be removed. They were scheduled to be removed long before COVID was a thing and long before anybody was talking about absentee ballots, because the post office has been losing money for years. So they were streamlining operations and cutting costs to make it more effective.
And they've been doing that. They've been doing that even under Obama and before then, because again, they're losing money, and it's just a natural thing to do. But MSNBC, for one, they know it's not true, but yet, just like the Russia conspiracy, they're perpetuating it anyway. They know it's not true.
Yeah, and honestly, the only thing I can think of is that they're already setting up their excuse for why Biden loses.
Or the next impeachment round. Could be.
Well, I mean, I think that, I think if they tried to impeach him again, I don't think anybody would take it seriously. I think that ship has sailed. They blew that.
Yeah, they did. So
that
is very interesting. It's an historic agreement, no coverage. I got to ask you, I'm sorry, it's a dumb question. I mean, if Trump wins, what happens on election night with CNN? I mean, do they implode? I mean, what happens?
Well, that's another question, because if the Democrats have their way and there's so many absentee ballots, we're not going to have a winner on election night. It's going to take at least 2 or 3 days to count all the absentee ballots. In fact, there was one district in New York had so many absentee ballots, and this is just a primary, they couldn't declare a winner for 2 weeks.
I actually think that, my conspiracy theory, yes, that is a good point, Dr. Lopkin. But I think CNN wants Trump to win to some degree, because if Trump loses, their ratings go. I mean, that's all they have is Trump. It's really true. MSNBC without Trump.
That is a possibility.
So the convention's on. You mentioned that Steve Colbert was shedding some light on it. What did he have to say?
Stephen Colbert has done some very interesting things over the past few days. The first of which was actually an interview with Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know Stephen Colbert, lobs softballs at the Democrats. He wants to make them look good. He did this in his Harris interview until the end when he asked her about the comments she made during the debate, about the negative comments that she attacked Biden with. And Harris lost her mind. It was a ridiculous display, and Colbert sat there with this amazed look on his face like, I can't believe this is who they chose to be vice president.
Wow.
Then, last night, at the main convention speaker was Bill Clinton, and Clinton went after Trump for how he has behaved as president. And immediately after the convention, on the Late Show, Colbert went off about how dare Bill Clinton, of all people, criticize somebody for how they behaved in the Oval Office.
That's not very bright. That's what you call losing your fastball. He never would have done that 10 years ago, especially now where there's incriminating pictures of him getting a massage or something like that in Epstein's
exactly.
compound.
Yes, in Epstein's compound, those pictures came out. But, I mean, the key to all of this is Stephen Colbert has been a diehard Democrat. He has fought for them. And now he, on national television, is exasperated with them. They are losing their biggest supporters.
Well,
and
is that reflective of some of the poll numbers, depending on which one you want to see? Some of them have Trump within 3.
Trump's numbers have been going up ever since they named Harris vice president. CNN was actually caught going back to their bias. They run their own polls all the time. I'm not talking about scientific polls. These are things that they ask their viewers. And they asked their viewers about whether or not they were going to support Biden-Harris. And African-American males came out on this poll saying there was no way they would ever support Harris. CNN tried to bury the results of the poll. And when people started noticing, because this is a weekly poll they do, when people started noticing that the results weren't where they usually were, CNN relented and showed the results, showing that Harris has no support.
I think that was actually to your overall point. I don't think Harris was a great pick. There's an African-American woman from Georgia. There's others. She really brings nothing, obviously, in terms of the electoral college.
There are many African-American female Democrats that would have made a better choice.
No question. There was one other, I think, tidbit in the news that you were interested in, if I'm not mistaken, isn't there?
Well, it was mostly just about how, Colbert's reactions, and I love, everything's about the Democratic convention this week. You'll note the Democrats are going after Trump like they have never gone after an incumbent before. And Trump made a comment after Michelle Obama's speech, and I love this comment because it's absolutely correct. And he said, "I am in office because of your husband." And that's something the Democrats just don't seem to get a hold of.
That's interesting.
Trump's election was a rebuke of Obama's policies.
Without a doubt, and that's why Obama took it so hard and never really got over it.
Yes. And now they're trying to go back, going, we're going to go back to those policies. It's like, no, that's what lost you the election the first time. And they don't seem to understand that.
I also think, in conclusion, I believe that I think they're not. I was a lot more positive, if you will, that it was the Democrats were in control. But after looking at the convention for a couple of days, their complete dismissal of any policy, I think that they're really not in touch with, let's just say, Main Street America, and I think that could be an issue, and I think Biden's a real issue too. So do you agree, Dr. Lopkin? I'd give maybe Trump a 55%.
I think right now Trump has a 55% chance of winning. I want to see what happens to the numbers next week. Usually a convention produces a bounce. If the Democrats don't get that bounce, and it's starting to look like they might not, I think that actually pushes Trump's chances up to 60%.
Amazing. Well, Dr. Lopkin, thanks so much. That concludes another edition of Carnivore Bites, and we'll be live on Friday, talking to an entrepreneur, hopefully, that has some wisdom about getting through difficult situations, because he started a business before this pandemic, but is seeing it through, and some of the challenges I'm sure you can relate to as well, Dr. Lopkin, of perseverance in difficult situations.
And join us Friday at 4 at blogtalkradio.com/Carnivore Radio.
Thanks for listening, and thank you, Dr. Lopkin.
See you Friday.
You've been listening to Carnivore Bites, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us every week on carnivoreradio.com, exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast Store, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.